Our son stole $5,500. That was the sentence my father, Richard Matthews, announced into the microphone right in front of 180 guests dressed in their finest. The room didn't fall silent all at once. It tightened, like every breath was pulled back at the same time. And in that strange stillness, I understood something I had avoided for years. My family would choose their reputation over their own son without hesitation. I felt every pair of eyes shift toward me, some confused, some entertained, some already convinced. My father lifted a hand, motioning for me to walk to the front. The carpet under my shoes felt heavier with each step, as if the floor itself wanted to swallow me before they did. My mother, Claire, waited beside him with a folder held carefully against her chest. She opened it slowly, almost gracefully, as if she had rehearsed the moment. Inside were receipts, new, crisp, untouched, yet presented as if they had lived in my pockets for weeks. My sister Ava stood a few feet away, mascara shimmering under the lights as fake tears rolled down her cheeks. She whispered into the microphone that she didn't want to betray me, but her voice trembled with a practiced sincerity I knew too well. Then security stepped forward. They reached into my jacket and pulled out the planted card, the printed slips, the damning evidence that wasn't mine. Phones lifted around the room. Someone gasped. Someone else recorded. My father's verdict came next. Cold and public, I was no longer part of the family. Minutes later, I was outside in the rain, soaked, shaking, and filmed by strangers as the ballroom music played behind me. And even then, I promised myself one thing: the truth would return, and it would hit harder than any of them expected. The rain that night felt like it was washing something off me, but not fast enough to erase the humiliation. And as I walked away from the country club, one truth stayed with me. What happened inside that ballroom didn't start there. It started years earlier, long before the receipts, the lies, or the cameras. So if you're going to understand how everything fell apart, you need to understand the house I grew up in. The Matthews family looked perfect from the outside. People saw the mansion on Crestwood Lane, the imported cars, the charity galas, the magazine covers. My father, Richard Matthews, was the CEO of a defense tech company and liked to pretend he carried the weight of the nation in his briefcase. My mother, Claire, ran our home the same way PR firms run billion-dollar brands, every gesture curated, every smile rehearsed, and every floor quietly buried under designer furniture and strategic lighting. To the world, we were polished. To ourselves, we were silent. Growing up, I learned early that in my family, attention wasn't given freely, it was earned, traded, or strategically denied, and I was the kid who never earned enough. I loved computers, wires, code, and the quiet logic of things that didn't lie to you. I could build a system from scratch, repair anything that beeped, and explain how our entire home network worked. But those weren't the skills my parents wanted to show off. If I accomplished something, they'd nod politely and change the topic. If my sister Ava tied a ribbon in her hair correctly, cameras appeared like it was a national holiday. She was the golden child from the moment she could talk, charming, photogenic, and gifted at making adults laugh. She had a glow that made people lean in. I had a quietness that made them turn away. In our house, she was the sun, I was a shadow. It wasn't jealousy, it was recognition. Ava played the game my parents built, and she played it well. She understood how to say the exact right thing to earn approval, how to tilt her head, how to cry on command, how to spin a harmless moment into a performance worth applauding. My parents adored her for it. They rewarded her for it. They shaped our entire household around her shine. And me. I became the kid who was useful, not celebrated. If a device broke, I fixed it. If the Wi-Fi crashed, I rebooted it. If my father needed a last-minute tech setup before a business call, I was summoned like backup staff. I told myself that if I worked hard enough, if I did everything right, maybe one day they would see me the way they saw her. But effort didn't create love in my family. It only created convenience, and I didn't realize how deep that truth ran until I was old enough to notice the way my father's eyes softened when Ava entered the room, and hardened the second he turned to look at me, or the way my mother introduced Ava as our pride while introducing me as Richard's older one, as if even saying my name might disrupt the harmony she tried to maintain. Still, for a long time, I believed things could change that. Maybe if I earned good grades, stayed out of trouble, built something impressive enough, I could shift the balance. I didn't want their praise. I just wanted to be visible. I once said to myself, quietly, when no one was around, if I try hard enough, maybe they'll finally see me. But in my house, trying didn't make you loved. It just made you a better tool. And that illusion, fragile as it was, followed me all the way to the night of my father's birthday. A night where the ballroom sparkled, the guests buzzed, and my family prepared a show grander than any they had staged before. I just didn't know I would be cast as the villain, and when the curtain finally lifted, they didn't hesitate to let the world watch me fall. The weeks leading up to my father's birthday felt like living inside a stage production I hadn't auditioned for. Every corner of the house shimmered with new flowers, new lighting, new rules. Staff whispered, planners rushed. My mother rehearsed her smiles in front of the mirror. My father, Richard, barked orders like a man hosting a presidential banquet, not a family celebration. I should have known that night wasn't about him turning 55, it was about proving, once again, that the Matthews family was flawless. By the time the guests arrived, the ballroom looked like a movie set. Crystal chandeliers painted gold across the walls, waiters floated between tables with champagne, and a jazz trio played softly beneath the hum of gossip. Everywhere I looked, there were people pretending to belong, people just like us. When my father stood to speak, I was halfway through a glass of water at the back table. He tapped his spoon against the crystal glass, the sound slicing through the chatter. The room hushed. He smiled, that familiar photo-ready smile, the one that never reached his eyes. Before we continue, he began, I need to address something important, something disappointing. The word hung there like smoke. My stomach tightened. My mother's gaze found me across the room, cold, measured, rehearsed. He gestured for me to come forward. My feet moved on their own. The crowd parted, and I could hear whispers forming little waves around me. What happened? Is he in trouble? When I reached the front, my mother stepped closer, holding a leather folder as if it were a sacred text. She opened it with delicate precision. Inside were crisp receipts, a debit card, and printed screenshots of supposed transfer proof, she said, of money I'd stolen from my father's account. This, she announced, was found during our internal audit. A ripple of discomfort passed through the room. I looked at her, then at my father. You think I did this? Ava's voice cracked behind me, trembling perfectly. Please, just tell the truth. She wiped her tears, every movement painfully cinematic. I didn't want it to come to this. I stared at her, my throat burning. You rehearsed that line, didn't you? I whispered, low enough for only her to hear. Security stepped forward before I could say more. My father nodded once. One of them reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the planted evidence. Gasps scattered across the room like broken glass. My father's voice was firm, final, public. You are no longer part of this family. I remember the collective silence, the cameras flashing, the scent of roses and perfume and polished floors. My mother turned her face away, not in shame but in control. Ava avoided my eyes, still shaking, still perfect. Someone ushered me toward the exit. The last thing I heard was applause resuming, the jazz band picking up again, as if nothing had happened. Outside, the rain had started. I stood beneath it, shivering, empty, staring at my reflection in a puddle. That boy looking back at me wasn't me anymore. That night, I didn't just lose my family, I lost the last version of myself that still believed they could love me. The rain didn't stop that night, and neither did the cameras. Every drop felt heavier than the last, cold against my skin, but it still didn't numb the ache. The gates closed behind me with a mechanical thud, final, almost ceremonial. That was the sound of my exile. By the time I reached the corner of the street, headlights cut through the storm. A familiar beat-up Jeep slowed beside me, the passenger window rolling down. Aiden leaned across the seat, his face pale under the dim streetlight. Get in, he said quietly. No judgment, no questions, just two words that sounded like safety. I climbed in, soaked to the bone. The heater hummed weakly, filling the silence between us. He didn't ask what happened. He already knew. The video had probably hit every group chat in town by now. For the next 3 weeks, I lived on Aiden's couch, a hand-me-down leather thing that groaned every time I turned. I barely slept. My phone buzzed with messages I couldn't bring myself to open. News articles, screenshots, comments, memes with my face. People didn't just believe the lie, they enjoyed it. At school, my name turned into a punchline. The robotics team removed me from the group chat overnight. Teachers avoided eye contact. Even the few friends I thought I had stopped sitting near me. I was radioactive now, tainted by a story that was easier to accept than the truth. Meanwhile, my mother told everyone I was in rehab, a convenient narrative to keep the family spotless. My father stayed silent, and Ava, of course, played the role of the heartbroken sister perfectly online. Her posts were full of sad quotes and staged tears. It was almost impressive how quickly they rewrote reality. But somewhere between exhaustion and humiliation, I stopped feeling angry. Anger was loud, messy, useless. I needed clarity, so I got a job at a local electronics store. Night shift, minimum wage. Rows of flickering monitors and old circuit boards became my company. There was a strange peace in routine, fixing what was broken when I couldn't fix myself. Every night after work, I'd walk home past dark houses, their windows glowing faintly with quiet lives. And I'd think about my own house, the one I built, in a way, because the truth was, I had wired half that mansion myself. Security systems, routers, server backups. I was the one who made sure my parents' world stayed connected. And if I had built it, maybe I had left pieces of myself behind. That thought hit one night while I sat in Aiden's living room, half asleep with a soldering iron in my hand. I replayed everything, the accusations, the proof, the receipts that looked too perfect. Then I remembered those receipts came from my father's office printer. The timestamps never matched the story they told. I started digging, quietly, cautiously. I accessed the house's old security network through a forgotten admin account I'd created years ago. The system logs were still active, motion sensors, device connections, IP pings, and buried in that data was something strange. Someone had accessed the household server from Ava's tablet at the exact time the money supposedly disappeared. The same device that later found the evidence in my jacket. Coincidence? Maybe once, but not twice, not with the patterns I was seeing. For the first time since that night, I felt my heartbeat steady, not from panic, but purpose. They thought I was broken, powerless, done, but I was the one who built their digital world, line by line, and if they'd used it to destroy me, then every trace of their lie still lived somewhere inside that network. They thought they'd stripped me of every weapon, but what they forgot was that I had left my fingerprints on every device in that house. The moment I found Ava's digital trail, sleep stopped existing. Every spare hour became part of an obsession that didn't feel like revenge, it felt like survival. I started where I knew the truth would hide. Inside the machines. The Matthews mansion wasn't just a home, it was a network I'd built piece by piece. Routers, security cameras, a local NAS server, a cloud backup synced every 48 hours. My father wanted a fortress of privacy. Ironically, he gave me the map to his secrets. From Aiden's apartment, I used a hidden admin port I'd left years ago. The first thing I found was server logs, clean at first glance, but not perfect. Digital fingerprints never lie, they just hide better than humans. I traced login histories, cross-checked timestamps, and rebuilt fragments of deleted footage from the night of the alleged theft. That's when it all started connecting. Ava's tablet accessed a house network minutes before the transaction. The same IP address pinged the office printer. 30 seconds later, a fake receipt was created, one I recognized from the proof folder they'd waved around at the party. It wasn't sloppy, it was surgical, and that precision was exactly what exposed her, piece by piece. I built a timeline, a digital crime scene with every entry timestamped, every device signature marked. I packaged everything into folders. Evidence A, router logs. Evidence B, cloud sync. Evidence C, surveillance cache. It looked less like a family issue and more like a corporate investigation, because that's what it was turning into. 2 weeks into gathering evidence, a black car pulled up outside the electronics store where I worked. The man who stepped out looked too polished for a place that sold used keyboards. Lucas Bennett, my father's business partner and his fixer. He waited until the customers cleared out before approaching. "Ethan," he said, voice smooth as static. "Let's talk somewhere private." We sat in the break room. He didn't waste time. "Your father regrets how things unfolded. He's willing to make this right." "By right, you mean quiet." Lucas smiled faintly. "You're smart. Don't ruin your future over pride. Take this deal. Disappear from the headlines." He slid an envelope across the table. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. "I don't want your money," I said. "I want the truth." His eyes hardened, but his tone stayed soft. "The truth doesn't feed you, kid. Money does." I left the envelope on the table and walked out. That was the night I realized something bigger was at stake, something they were desperate to bury. Aiden noticed the change in me. "You're planning something," he said one night. "I'm building something," I corrected, "but I need help telling the world." That's when he introduced me to Chloe Reader Journalism. Major with a sharp voice and a reputation for finding stories people wanted to keep hidden. She listened to everything without interrupting, then sat back with a look that told me she was already mapping the angles. "This isn't just about your family," she said. "Your dad's company handles defense contracts, right? If I can prove any internal fraud or misrepresentation, this could blow up way beyond a family scandal." She was right, and for the first time, the fear I'd carried turned into focus. Together, we built a two-phase plan. Phase 1. Expose the truth through a podcast series, undeniable, timestamped, and sourced. Phase 2. Connect the corruption inside Matthews Tech to the same people who destroyed me. We prepared everything meticulously: scripts, evidence packages, voice distortions for safety. But we needed one final piece, Ava's own confession. Homecoming night gave us that chance. Chloe helped set up hidden mics at the event. Aiden distracted security, and I, the ghost of the family, reappeared just long enough for Ava to take the bait. Her arrogance did the rest. She bragged to her friends about how she saved the family from my screw-ups, how she had to make it look real. Every word recorded, every laugh sealed her fate. When I replayed the file later, sitting in Aiden's car, something inside me went still. For months, I'd lived on pain and anger, but hearing her voice confess, proud, untouchable, didn't make me furious, that it made me free. That night, for the first time in months, I didn't feel like the broken one. I felt like someone finally taking his life back. The night I heard Ava's confession, the plan stopped being theory, it became action. Chloe edited the audio files with surgical precision, cleaning the noise, layering the receipts, times, and my reconstructed network data. We named the podcast The Ghost in the System, a fitting title for a boy erased by his own family who decided to speak through their machines. We released episode 1 at midnight on a Sunday. By sunrise, it had 45,000 plays. The story spread like static across the internet, Reddit threads, Twitter hashtags, even local news anchors whispering, "Did you hear about the Matthews scandal?" Within hours, journalists were emailing Chloe for interviews. Her inbox was chaos, her phone buzzing every few seconds. By the end of the first day, The Ghost in the System hit the top 10 on Apple Podcasts. My father's name was trending right below it. Matthews' tech stock dropped 7% before lunch. By day 2, investors froze pending contracts. By day 3, federal auditors showed up at their headquarters. The same company that once bragged about integrity now had to answer for fraudulent financial reports, tax irregularities, and fake invoices, things Chloe and I hadn't even touched yet. Then my mother made her move. She posted a statement online, part denial, part victim act. "Our family is suffering from malicious defamation," she wrote. The words polished by PR but hollow to anyone who'd heard the recordings. Instead of saving face, it poured gasoline on the fire. People dissected her post line by line, comparing it with evidence from the podcast. Every lie she typed turned into another headline. That was when my inbox lit up, not with hate, but with messages. From strangers, people who'd been silenced, accused, erased by those they trusted. Some thanked me, some begged for help. It was overwhelming and humbling. But I wasn't finished. 3 days after episode 1, I sent my father an email. No greetings, no emotions, a list of conditions, a public apology. Full restoration of my college fund, Ava's resignation from the company internship, a written promise of no retaliation, signed by both parents. If he refused, episode 2 would go live. He didn't reply. Instead, he showed up in person. I saw him from the window, same tailored suit, same authority in every step. Only this time he looked smaller. He waited by his black sedan, engine still running. "Get in," he said when I walked outside. I didn't. He sighed, glancing around the empty parking lot. "You've made your point, Ethan. Take down the podcast before it destroys everything." I looked him in the eye. "Everything, or everyone who built it on lies." His voice dropped lower, that familiar edge returning. "You don't understand what you're playing with. People depend on me, on this company. You could ruin lives." "You ruined mine first," I said quietly. For the first time, he didn't have an answer. His anger cracked, just enough for me to see the fear beneath it. "I can make this go away." He tried again. "Lucas can fix the press. Pay whoever needs paying." "Lucas." I almost laughed. "He's already talking to investigators. You should check your email before you worry about me." His expression froze. That was the moment he realized he'd lost control, not just of the narrative, but of the people who once protected it. That same night, Chloe uploaded episode 2. It wasn't about MIT, it was about the company. We exposed their internal reports, the offshore accounts, the manipulated military bids, everything tied neatly back to my father's name and Lucas Bennett's signature. The fallout was instant. News vans lined the streets outside their offices. Board members resigned. The Department of Justice opened an inquiry within 48 hours. Lucas, cornered by federal agents, turned on my father to save himself. The empire that once humiliated me collapsed in real time, and yet, victory didn't feel sweet. Quiet. heavy, like standing in the aftermath of an explosion you set yourself a week later. The family called a meeting. They wanted to talk before the press did. I went not for reconciliation, but for closure. The conference room was smaller than I remembered. My father sat at the head, eyes hollow. My mother's hands trembled as she tried to speak. Ava cried loud, dramatic, but not fake this time. I connected my laptop to the projector. On the screen, I showed them everything: timestamps, device logs, Ava's confession, even Lucas's signed affidavit. It wasn't revenge. It was truth, framed like a mirror. When it ended, silence filled the room. My father stared at the evidence. The empire he'd built reduced to data points and guilt. Ava whispered, "I didn't mean for it to go this far." I looked at her. "Neither did I, but you can't choose how far lies travel once you let them loose." She sobbed harder. My mother reached for my hand, but I stepped back. "An apology," I said, "doesn't erase the truth. It only acknowledges you can't hide from it anymore." Outside, reporters waited. Inside, the family that had destroyed me was finally collapsing under the weight of its own facade that night. As I left the building, the air felt clearer. The noise, the lies, the fear, it was all fading. But there was something else in the silence too. A reminder that consequences don't always end with the guilty. Sometimes, they reach the ones who turned away when you needed them most. When the dust finally settled, the silence felt almost unfamiliar. For months, every day had been chaos: lawyers, reporters, investigations. But when it ended, there was just quiet. Matthew's tech was gone. My father sold what was left to avoid a criminal trial. My mother lost her PR clients and disappeared from every social event she once ruled. Avi, my sister, who'd once shone brighter than all of us, was sentenced to community service and dropped from her university's scholarship list. And me, for the first time in my life, I wasn't defined by their last name. Caltech offered me admission with a full scholarship funded by Vector Systems, the very company that had replaced my father's contract. It felt poetic in a way. Not revenge, just balance. Starting over was strange. I still carried scars, but they stopped burning. I poured myself into building something new, a project I called Second Step, a mentorship program for teens who'd been abandoned or disowned. We taught them coding, networking, financial literacy tools to rebuild. Just like I had. The first workshop had 3 students, then 10, then 50. Each one a reminder that pain can be repurposed into something powerful. A year later, I got a call I didn't expect. My family wanted to meet. They showed up at a small cafe near campus, looking smaller than I remembered. My father spoke first, voice quiet and worn. "We were wrong, Ethan, all of us." I nodded, not out of forgiveness, but understanding. "I don't hate you," I said, "but I don't belong there anymore." My mother cried. Ivor couldn't look at me, and that was okay, because closure doesn't always come with reconciliation. It comes when you stop needing it. When graduation came, I walked across the stage with my head high. My speech wasn't about victory, it was about restoration. I used to think losing everything was the end, I told the crowd. But sometimes, losing everything is what frees you to rebuild the right way. When I stepped outside, Aiden and Chloe were waiting. The California sun hit my face, warm, steady, honest. For the first time, I didn't feel like a ghost in someone else's story. I felt alive in my own. Because sometimes the people meant to protect you are the ones who push you to the ground. But maybe that fall is what teaches you how to stand. Have you ever had to rebuild yourself after losing the place you once called home? Share your story, because maybe your survival will help someone else find their strength. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this story. If it moved you, if it reminded you of your own strength, or if you simply believe that truth always finds its way, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps more stories like this reach those who might need to hear them. And remember, sometimes, the hardest endings are just quiet beginnings in disguise.